Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. We have people joining us from all over the place. So, welcome to the Live Out Live Beyond the Main Stage in partnership with the Grammy Museum session. We have these sessions periodically, every fall, every spring. And now we're getting into the summer, and this is our last session before we really get into full swing of summer planning and summer vacation. So, thank you guys so much for joining us. Today, we are joined by the Kia Forum, two executives from the Kia Forum. But before I move into introductions for them and telling you guys a little bit more about Live Out Live, I want to thank Skylar, our partner with the Grammy Museum. Skylar, hello.
Hey Candice, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure working on these programs with you and the Live Out Alive team. These are some of my favorite programs that we do. Glad that we kept this going online as well too. And I see some people who have returned from the previous session that we had last time. So thank you all for being here. I see some new faces as well as some new names. So excited, Candice, to hear from our amazing panelists that we have today. So thank you all for being here, taking the time to share your knowledge and experience with us. And yeah, I'll turn it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Skylar. Yeah, always a really great time having these sessions. These sessions are focus driven on the live music industry. And for people who want to pursue careers in the live music industry, that's what Live Out Live is all about. We are here to help create pathways and opportunities and access into the live music industry for everyone of different types of backgrounds. So glad that you guys are here to help us move this program forward. So today we are again welcomed by two executives from the Kia Forum to talk about event production. And if you missed the last session, we talked about marketing and sales and really had a great session around social media and what drives ticket sales in the live music space within the Kia Forum. So today we're going to go a little bit backwards and talk about the event production side of it and how to establish that even before you put a show on sale, what that all looks like. And today we have two amazing panelists, Ismael and Amanda, and I'm going to turn it over to them and allow them to introduce themselves, and then we are going to get into our questions. But really quickly, a few housekeeping rules. When we wrap up the session, which will be about 30 to 40 minutes into it, we will start a small Q&A and give you guys an opportunity to give your feedback. If you're most comfortable, feel free to drop those questions in the chat, or if you'd like to engage with Amanda and Ismael and ask them questions directly, feel free to raise your hand and come on camera and ask them the questions, and they'll be happy to answer them. So we are going to kick things off with introductions. Amanda, Ismael, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, I can go first. So hi, my name is Amanda Verdadero. I'm the production manager at the Kia Forum. Just a little bit of background about me, originally from New Jersey. I moved out to LA in 2013 to attend the University of Southern California for music industry. And there I had a lot of different jobs, but the main one I had was working in a theater on campus, which is kind of how I got into live events and started working in the Los Angeles area. And I actually started working at the Kia Forum right after I graduated in 2017 as a production assistant. And then kind of worked my way up, learned a lot in that position, was promoted to coordinator, and then continued learning and growing, and then became manager about 2 years ago. So I work a lot with a lot of different promoters who bring in tours, work directly with the production managers, getting the audio, lighting, rigging, all of that side into the building from the very start of the day to the very end. So a lot of different things happen throughout that. But that is a little bit about me.
Ismael?
Sure, thank you. Hopefully my connection remains stable because I think I was having some issues, but let me know if you notice anything. My name is Ismael Tenorio. I am one of the event managers here at the Kia Forum. And I guess a little bit of background about myself. I was born in Mexico and I came when I was very young to LA. So I consider myself an Angelino. And so a little bit of my background. So I always wanted to do something music related, but also work with nonprofits. So the way I started in the industry was at the Music Center, which is one of the big performing arts centers in the country. And so I started with guest relations, and slowly started moving my way up to supervisor positions. And then from there, I went into events. I was very excited as guest relations. I witnessed a lot of events, but also I think the reaction that people have to all of these special events made me want to do a little deeper dive into the industry. So I became a coordinator for our at the time scheduling and events department, and then just got promoted to event operations manager along the way. And you know, to try to continue and explore more options, I would just want to do something bigger, and that's how I landed here at the Kia Forum. I'm still semi-new. I'm about 7 months in, still learning every day. And that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Well, you guys kind of got into the meat of some of the initial questions that I was going to ask. One of them was, how did you start your career in the live music industry, and what led you to the Kia Forum? And what are your primary responsibilities? So if you can get more deeper into some of those primary responsibilities that you have as a production manager and as an event manager, and kind of talk about what a typical day looks like for you.
Yeah, so as a production manager, we are kind of coordinating a lot of the production elements for the show. So how that works is that whatever show it is that's coming up, a few weeks in advance, sometimes months in advance, we will get connected with whoever's putting on that show, whether it's like a promoter, or a tour directly. We'll get connected with them, and we will start what's called the advance process. So they start sending us all the information and start asking us questions about the venue, because they're on tour, especially like they're trying to fit their show into a lot of different spaces. So they need to know what they need to adjust to fit into your particular space. And as a production manager, I know the space much better than them. So I'm able to give them a lot of information of what's going to fit. We'll get their rigging drawing, which has all of their points for lighting, audio, video, anything like that. And we actually take that and put it into our house grid just to see, like, is this going to fit? Is there anything kind of strange about it? Do we have to get engineering reviews on it? Those sorts of things. So the advanced process is a lot of just talking with the tour and seeing, what do you guys need? What sort of stage size do you need? Any sort of risers? What labor do you need? We are a union venue, so we work with Local 33. So we put together those labor numbers to send off to the union, and kind of talking through, like, what are the show needs. A lot of times, some tours will maybe only tour theaters. So this is their first big arena show. So we have to kind of check in with them to see, like, okay, you usually don't do this, so maybe this many hands, maybe we should do the stage this size, we should roll the stage, just a lot of those sorts of things within the advanced process. So that takes up a good chunk of my time as a production manager, actually advancing that with the shows, because every show is just so different. You never know, like, what one show needs, and each show you learn a little bit more to kind of carry over to the next show, which is great. But kind of on the actual day of show, as a production manager, I get there at the very start of load-in. So it kind of ranges. I had one the other day. We started load-in at 5 a.m. So I was there at like 4:30 in the morning. And then you're kind of there until load out at the end of the day, which sometimes is 2 or 3 in the morning. And through that day, you start them off, and kind of get the tour going, showing them all the dressing room spaces, showing them back of house, getting them connected with the union, walking all the fire lanes, and also helping them kind of get connected with the other representatives in the venue. So we have like a dressing room coordinator, we have catering, just a lot of other different departments. So kind of get the ball rolling with them. And then a lot of it is really troubleshooting throughout the day on show day, of just things come up and you have to make adjustments based on, like, oh, the barricade's in the wrong spot. We didn't know there was going to be subs for this show. Just so many small little things that just never came up in your advanced process, that you just kind of have to roll with the punches and figure out a solution to on day of show. And then obviously we open doors, show goes on, making sure we update any costs, because they a lot of times will do settlement at the end of the night, which is basically where the booking team and the show itself, like, they kind of meet together and decide what costs go where and who's paying for what. So we have to get our production costs together, and I'm sure Ismail will also talk a lot about that because he does a lot on that side. But on my end, I get my production costs together and send that off. We have a great show, and then we do our loadout, and we get the tour out, take everything down, load up all the trucks, and we have to coordinate with parking as well, just to make sure that all gets in. And sometimes there are stadium events across the street, so that definitely puts a little wrench into our plans sometimes, but it's just a lot of coordination at the end of the day.
Makes sense. So really quickly, Amanda, I understand advancing, but does advancing mean a certain time frame? Does it vary based on the show? How far in advance do you start to put the production elements together?
It really,
And what are some of those specific advanced questions that are asked?
Mhm. It really does vary based on the show. Like, I've had shows reach out to me like 2 or 3 months in advance. Whenever we have really big shows as well, like award shows, we're usually advancing those maybe 6 months in advance. A lot of the times we'll actually start the seating chart. We'll build all of that and kind of have an idea of what the show's going to look like, whether it's going to be GA or seated. We'll have an idea of that when it actually goes on sale, because we have to know what tickets are available to sell. But the advance process, it really depends on the show, depends on the promoter. Everyone does it a little bit differently. I have some shows, they'll reach out 2 months in advance. Some shows I don't get until the week of, and we're kind of scrambling a little bit. I would always prefer to have it a month in advance, but 2 weeks is usually like the sweet spot for most people, is when we get that. But on my end, a lot of questions that we'll ask in the advance. First, I guess I'll go through the rider that they send over, if they send over a rider. And a rider has all of the production elements that they need. So like the stage size, front of house, what audio, what lighting and rigging, and kind of everything they're carrying. So I will first kind of go through all of that and then kind of come up with my questions. So usually on my end, it's like, what size stage do you need? Do you want it in the middle of the floor? Do you want it built in place? What do you need for front of house? What are your union numbers? Maybe we need to add some more people to this. Can we preset anything? Because our internal operations team, they need to know beforehand, like, what do we need to actually put in the house? We have a lot of house equipment that we use, and sometimes, like, if it's not in the building, you have to go outside and grab it. So that just is very time consuming. We also ask for any like dressing room needs as well. And then also like for any like IT, rigging, audio, lighting, just sort of what is going on there, and kind of getting some diagrams and kind of seeing where everything is going to be laid out. Those are sort of the main questions that I'll ask in my advance process.
Wonderful, makes perfect sense. So let's back up, because Ismail, you are someone who lays the foundation for the events that are in-house, right? So tell us a little bit more about some of your roles and responsibilities and what your day-to-day looks like.
Sure thing. So, I work in tandem. The way I see event management, it's just maintaining an overall picture, and then relying on all of the internal departments, including production, as Amanda had mentioned. The way we fold in all the information, at least the event managers are more about gathering the information. So it could be, it comes in different directions, from different directions. So one of them would be production. Sometimes different shows may have a VIP element to it. So, they'll have special ticketing packages, and then they have their certain needs. We have like sponsorship activations as well. So the tours, sometimes the tours roll around with props, or, I had a tour try to display a monster truck as part of the tour. It's kind of a photo op. We also have marketing elements. We have to account for merch, food and beverage, and any other ancillary activations that take place. So with that being said, we also work with our internal departments, such as like security, as well as operations. So it's overall maintaining an overall picture. And obviously, I think the production schedule just really informs us. For one, it sets, I believe it sets a foundation, a timeline, and then we're able to plug in the different elements. We're able to better inform everyone as to what part they're, either what timing or how they're going to be folded into the whole equation. So in terms of day-to-day, part of what we do, again, gathering information, we try to put that into an event sheet as detailed as possible with whatever information we're given. And then to make sure we're all on the same page, we also host event meetings, and that's where we all have an opportunity to come together and go over all of the event details. And then all the departments are able to either ask questions, add more context to what we're doing, and then it's just the overall effort that we have. Now that's the internal portion. The external portion is dealing with the tour, dealing with like tour security. We also liaise with the fire department. And so those are kind of the main external partnerships that we form. And again, I think the tour security is also an important element. They're able to inform us, what's happening, the crowd demographic. They're able to give us very detailed information. If if they've been on tour, they're able to tell us, what to expect. And that's just to be able to also serve the guests. So that I would say that's the third element, is the guest facing part of the event. Ultimately, we're here for the artists and as well as the guests. And so it takes a lot of collaboration from our different partners, whether they're internal or external, to make it all happen.
Yeah, you guys have really downloaded us on all of the things. Sound like you wear many, many hats, although you have a specific role. So in all of the things that you guys have mentioned, Ismael, can you tell me what the most critical phase in your preparation for the show is, and how do you prioritize those efforts during those phases?
Sure thing. So something just critical overall, I think that helps everyone, is just effective planning. And that means also expecting the unexpected. And I think, again, and I think I mentioned it already, but collaboration is just huge. I don't think one single person or one single department could do everything on their own. So I think that's huge. And then the last portion, at least for me, is relationship building. I think that's super important. I think I'll touch on that a little later, but I think just being able to rely on others. Sometimes things just come up and there's very little time to do that. And so with that being said, I think the relationship building just creates a lot of trust within the different departments, teams, and even with the visiting tour. Sometimes it's also making them feel very welcome and that we're here to help them, and in a way, we're all working together. So we'll do our best in that way, and I think that's very, very important.
I 100% agree. Very critical, and we will have some more time to elaborate on the depth of those relationships and how essential they are to allow things to flow much more, smoother when it comes to a show, because a show is big, it's hectic, so you need to be really connected behind the scenes. So Amanda, can you also share a little bit more about what the most critical phases in your preparation for the show is, and how do you prioritize those efforts?
Yeah, I think definitely critical to communicate with everyone and make sure like we're all on the same page with like what is going on. So that's internally and externally. Like I need to make sure like Ismael knows what the details are, what the timeline is, so that way security knows, that way like no one's getting stopped when we're coming in at 4 a.m. So communication is definitely key to everything. And I think that goes along with the tour. Like usually on the week of, I will actually have a call with them and just sort of talk through the day of like, okay, just making sure we're all on the same page here, that our expectations align. Because I think that is the most critical, because sometimes you will get requests from like a million different people. You get so many emails, and just sort of being like, oh, whoa, wait a second, like I would need to make sure like this is correct. Like we are all know like this is the time, this is set. So I think that is sort of most critical of like that week of just sort of going through and of like just checking in with everybody and just making sure we're on the same page, which we are internally, we'll have our event meeting every week. My team also will meet with our operations department every week. So operations at the Kia Forum, they they handle all of our house equipment. So like the staging, the barricade, any risers, chairs, all of that. And things change so much. So we meet with them weekly and just discuss what's coming up, what transitions are needed, how are we going to get from show A to show B, because sometimes there is a lot of work in between, and that it's maybe like 4 hours to transition from one show to the next, and they have to strike a whole riser section, build a whole stage, flip all the dressing rooms. So a lot of that week of very critical is just meeting with everyone and just going over it, so that we all know what's happening and we can have a smooth transition into the show and make sure that everything gets done that needs to get done. Oh, Candace, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. Thanks so much, Amanda. So you mentioned operations, and so I wanted to ask Ismail, can you shed a little bit more light, just going deeper into the role of the operations person when it comes to the relationship between the venue, the artists, the team, the promoters? Like, what is that role? A little bit more deeper dive into that. What does that operational, aspect look like for the entire moving parts?
Sure. So I do like to think that, I do come from an operations background. So I think oftentimes we forget that it takes a whole team of people to really make things happen. And so I think it's super, super important. I think those are the unsung heroes, quite honestly. It's the people on the ground, it's the people doing all the labor. And so although we're here for the artists and the guests, I think we need to give a lot of credit to the operations just overall. So as an example here, part of our operations team, we do have, a VP and then the various directors that fall under the VP. So it could be, for example, security, building services, which includes the engineers, uh, building operations who do the setups and the strikes and the changeovers. And then also we have housekeeping, who maintain, especially like this clean. It takes a lot of work just to maintain, especially our building, which is a very iconic and historic building. But with it, since it's was I think constructed in the 60s, there's a lot of maintenance that's needed as well. It's been renovated, of course, but again, it's one of those where I don't think people realize that the importance of the operations teams. And not only that, I think on the day of the actual show, those are the main people that make a lot of the things happen, that fulfill a lot of the requests. And so again, I think it's just super, super important. It almost sometimes, it's always good to hear from either the artist team, just, when they said, oh, you guys are professionals, you got, everything went so smooth today. And it's one of those where I don't like to just take credit on my own, but I'm like, there's a whole team behind us, and it's everyone doing their part, and I'm glad that they feel that way at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sounds like a well-oiled machine, although there are really no such thing as, right? Because there are sometimes challenges and hitches. And so I want to ask about that. Amanda, how do you handle unexpected challenges or emergencies that arise during a show to ensure minimal disruption?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of unexpected things. I had a show recently. We had everything on the stage, like all the backline, all these like different lights and set pieces. And they come up to us and they're like, "Oh, the stage is in the wrong position, or like not in the position we want it to be in." It was in the right position, just based on what they told us in our advance process. But day of, they were like, "No, no, this is not the right spot." And we had to push it a little bit further upstage, thank God upstage, and not downstage towards the seats. But that's just like an example of, oh, we need to get all hands on deck and just make this happen. So in that scenario, got all the stage hands. We all worked together to push the stage. We also had to add some last minute risers, and a lot of the times, like those changes, um, they kind of come at you and you have to solve them quickly, because if you wait too long, then you're going to delay doors and you're going to delay the show and people are not going to be happy. So sometimes it is just sort of gathering all the information and making a decision based on what you know at the moment. And sometimes you'll reflect and you'll be like, oh, I could have done it this way, I could have done it that way. But at the time, it's just the decision you have to make and you just got to keep going. Um, so I think it's also thinking about like, oh, what is going to work for everybody. Like I also had another show that they set their front of house in my fire aisle. And they had already just like laid all their cables and dropped so many things. And I was busy doing some other things that I didn't notice it until maybe midway through the day. And I was like, hey, you guys can't be here. Like, this is the fire aisle. Like, the fire marshal's not going to like this. But I was able to get work with them, work with our operations team, get everyone together and kind of figure out a solution. And we ended up just moving the aisle to a different spot, and that ended up working for everybody. But a lot of the times, just solving those problems is just getting with all the right people and just kind of talking through like what is a solution that will work. And sometimes it's not going to work for everybody. Sometimes it is a bit of a compromise of like maybe security wanted the barricade a little bit further out, but you needed to be at a certain spot and they're still able to get somebody in there. So it's all right. And they're not 100% happy, but the tour's happy. The fans will still be happy. So just trying to find that middle ground within everyone to solve those problems is really key.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ismail, this is a good opportunity to chime in on the same question and really elaborate more on those relationships, that communication, that internal connection that you have with your colleagues and your peers when those last minute changes or emergencies do occur. How essential is that?
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, that's really, I think, something that I truly, truly value is just relationship building, because the more you get to know, it could be a simple chat in the morning, and good morning, how was your weekend? And, getting to know the people that you actually work with, I think it's super important. And just anyone in general, even visiting teams, I think having that small little rapport goes a long way because, as you mentioned, um, when it comes down to it, when we have like truly like a need for everybody to just jump in and do what we need to do, when you have that relationship, it builds trust, and then there are no questions asked. It's more like people are willing to do the right thing. Whereas I feel like if somebody doesn't really know you, if you don't really interact, sometimes people may say, may either not know you or know your role, or not have that trust. And so I think it's super, super important to really get to know your peers and your coworkers, and just build those relationships. And that goes, you know, lately what we found, our team has found, is even with other venues, we're in constant communication with other venues, because especially with certain shows that we know they're going to be either complicated or there are just so many moving parts, we're able to reach out to our contacts. And again, it's, hopefully I'm not cutting off, I think my internet's a little unstable, but again, it's building those relationships even with other venues. We just get so much great information from others. We have a great partner up north, who, if they know that a tour is coming through their arena and then we're next, like, it's gotten to the point that they just send us information saying like, hey, everything went great, or hey, look out for this, or and so I think that's super important, and especially in our industry.
I 100% agree. And thank you so much for sharing that insight. So, switching directions a bit, but still on course with that theme of what skills do these young professionals or live music industry hopefuls need in order to develop to work in this industry? One of them clearly is networking and making the proper connections with your colleagues and peers. But Amanda, can you tell a little bit more about practical skills that you feel that these students need to develop in order to aspire to work in a live music venue like the Kia Forum?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, like you were saying, communication is key, networking, being able to just kind of have a rapport with different people, because a lot of what we do is communicating. Like the number of phone calls that I have on my phone, like on a show day, is just constant. We're constantly on radio as well, and just being a clear communicator with everyone, I think, is super key. For production, I'd say learning a little bit more about the different production elements, so lighting, audio, rigging, video. I think that is really great. Like if you can get yourself into some sort of like theater or venue and even volunteer and just sort of learn. Like when I was a student at USC, I had interned at like the Troubadour doing audio, just to learn a little bit more. And I would like help set up on stage, like all the microphones, I'd run cables. And then I have a lighting background, so I know a lot about that. So you're just a bit more knowledgeable when the tours come in, and you're talking about these elements. I think it's really helpful. You don't need to know every little thing about it. I think being able to rely on and have great relationships with your team, and that includes our stagehands. They're a great resource. And I think also, yeah, reusing your resources as well is really key. Like if I don't know an answer to someone, I'll go find somebody who does. So like I'll go to my lead rigger and ask him like, hey, they want to do this. Like, is this going to work in our space? Do we need to add anything extra? Do we need to move their rigging point somewhere else? So just being able to utilize your resources and the people around you, because if you don't know something, I'm sure there's someone around you who is going to know the answer. So I think that is also really key, to kind of know how to use your resources, and kind of check in with everyone else, is really helpful.
Amazing. Thank you, Amanda. Ismail, same question. Are there any other practical skills that you feel that these young students and professionals should be developing? Are there any specific classes and courses or anything that you did leading up to your role at the Kia Forum?
Sure thing. So, you kind of had to just look at the industry you want to get into. So, for example, for me, um, I have mostly work experience, and so I learned from a lot of people that either mentored me, including fire marshals or former colleagues, or so I learned a lot as I went. But also, I think technically, so I took a few Vectorworks classes. I took some AutoCAD. I took some accounting classes as well, because uh, and I think it just helped overall, to get me where, here at the Kia Forum, because it does take a little bit of not only knowing the space, but being able to place things around the space that we have. But also you deal with a lot of finances, a lot of different estimates, a lot of different things. And then I think the other thing is just, learning from everyone. I think that's very, very important too, because even we deal with a lot of personalities, and even some of the personalities that might be tough or whatever, you can still learn something from them, even if even if they don't align with what you believe in, or I think there's always a learning opportunity from everyone. After all, they're in the industry for a reason, and I think just observing and just asking questions, and picking people's brains. And as an event manager, I feel like my skill set, I rely on others. I rely on the experts. I rely on experts like Amanda for production. I rely on, our security team for, all of the safety aspects of the venue. And so, yeah, I would say those are besides technical, also just being open to learning from others, and even learning a little bit about everybody's philosophy. I think it helps a lot. I think you're muted.
Yes, I was muted again. I was trying to give you the open floor, make sure that they can hear you clearly, because you were dropping so many great gems. So we did talk about, before we move on from that, you guys went into the networking and the relationships and how essential that is. Are there any specific, in Ismail, you dropped some really great gems on like learning from each other and learning about each other's philosophy and learning each other's skill sets, so that you'll know how to best maximize that relationship. Are there any strategies that you guys have to approach that? Any specific strategies on, do you sit down and connect with people one-on-one? Or I know you said maybe if you're at the coffee shop, at the coffee station at the job and you're kind of greeting each other, but are there any like specific strategies on really getting that network and that connection going and building that out? Since we know that relationships are the key to this industry, I really want to know, are there any practical strategies that you guys have to share?
I have attended a few conferences, so that is definitely helpful of just like meeting other people in the industry. We're lucky in that the sense of like touring people, like they kind of come to us and like we spend a whole day with them, and you kind of do bond with them when you're working, and that is something that I've always loved about working in this industry is like when you do a show with someone, like you are bonded with them, because you kind of have this shared experience with them. And I think that's really great. I think something that I started doing when I was like in college was just sort of like reaching out to people on like LinkedIn, and just kind of asking like, hey, can I meet up with you for like coffee and just sort of pick your brain about your role? And a lot of people are like more than happy to help, even if it's like just on Zoom now these days. I feel like it's even easier. Like you don't have to meet in person. It's always really nice to meet in person if you can, but if you can just do Zoom, that's also really great. And just asking lots of questions. I was really lucky that when I went to college, like a lot of people that I knew from college went on to work at venues. So I was kind of able to get in that way. But I also did a lot of work to get to that point. So I'd also say just like in order to meet people, I just started like taking lots of different jobs, like lots of part-time jobs. I worked like guest services at the Shrine. I did box office. I like worked a few festivals, because I had those other jobs. So like once you just get in, if you even if you're like an usher, a ticket taker, whatever role, that's a great way to just start meeting everyone. And these people are also your peers, and like you never know, like the person next to you might end up like being the production manager at a venue or something like that. So there's no small role in the industry. So wherever you start, it's really just like talking to everyone around you, like going on your breaks together, getting coffee together, maybe like getting lunch together or something, and just sort of building that relationship. Like everyone is essential to it. And people progress in so many different ways. There's like no one path to progressing in the industry. Like well, we've all not we've all but like a lot of us, we've been ushers, we've been guest services, like we've done those smaller roles to kind of get to our larger roles. So I think just sort of like starting in those positions, and there are a lot of volunteer positions as well, or I know the Hollywood Bowl is always hiring for those positions too, so definitely a great place to start, to just start building your network up. Oh no, you're muted again.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Amanda. That was really, really great advice on how to build your network out in the industry, in any industry, but specifically in the live music industry, where relationships and connections are so important. Like you said, that getting to know the person next to you who might be accelerated to another role will keep you in mind for opportunities, So that's how the industry grows and develops overall. From my perspective, I've seen it happen that way. So let's move on to a more lighter question. Ismael, which has been your favorite show to work on at the Kia Forum, and why does it stand out? And Amanda, you can answer that same question after Ismael.
So I think, I have a few shows in mind, but I know one of my first ones, it was just a little bit of a surreal experience for me. So we had, I think my second weekend working, we had Mana, which is a, Latin rock band, and they've been around the industry for a long time, and it's one of, and I grew up with that music, obviously, too. They were one of my favorite bands growing up. So just working that show, but also seeing them, like a few feet away during the artist movement that, we were involved in. It was just a surreal experience. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. And like, I'm a fly on the wall and I'm hearing these conversations they're having, backstage. And, like, I don't know, it was just a little surreal. So I would say, that as an experience, and then I gotta show I gotta also show some love for the show we had last week, even though it was my coworker's event, but helped out with Kendrick Lamar, and that was also surreal, and that was an amazing experience too. And I'm sure all the people attending in attendance, it was a historic event. So I really appreciate the shows that we have here, and again, it took a lot from all of the teams to put that together.
Amanda?
Yeah, I think it's so hard to choose a favorite show. We have so many shows. But I think one of my favorite shows that we do almost every year is the K-Rock Almost Acoustic Christmas. So that it's radio show, K-Rock puts it on. There's usually like 8 bands will play in one night. They have this like big rotating stage. But that show is always just very challenging because there's so many elements. So on the production side of it, we coordinate both like the staging, like inside show, like main event, and then we also coordinate all the other stuff that they do. So it is a Christmas show, so like it's very fun. They like decorate our whole outside exterior terrace. They have like a small outside stage as well. And then also in our VIP space, the Forum Club, like they decorate that. They do a small broadcast stage inside of there and have all the artists come and like do interviews. So that show is just like really fun. And for me, it was like a very full circle moment. Like the first show that I ever attended at the Forum was the Kerouac Almost Acoustic Christmas. So like to then work on it a few years later and just kind of see all the elements come together was just really great. And like that's some of my favorite music. So just seeing all of those great bands and knowing like I had a hand in it and was able to kind of coordinate like the exterior elements of it is always really great for me.
That's awesome. I actually produced Mana's tour when I was working at Live Nation. So that was a very fun, same to Ismail. I'm very familiar with the music and that was just an amazing experience to be involved in that process. So I do relate to that whole, you see it from one perspective and then you're immersed in it. And it's really dynamic to be able to be a part of the process, even if you're a small part of the process. So very exciting to hear. So before we move on to our Q&A, I wanted to ask one final question. What trends do you see shaping the future of the music venues? And how is the Kia Forum adapting to these evolving trends?
I think there's been a lot of focus on sustainability, especially just we know we need to do a better job with this. Like concerts just in itself, like they're not very sustainable. Like we just waste so much. So we are definitely making a big effort to work on sustainability and figure out a way to make our venue more sustainable. So a big thing that we got this year, we have a lot of worms for composting. So all of our catering, like any leftover materials that can be fed to the worms, we give it to the worms. We have like thousands of them in the parking lot set up. So that is definitely very exciting. And then we're also looking at, instead of using plastic cups, like looking at more like biodegradable materials. And I've seen this within like the Forum Club as well. Like instead of the plastic plates and forks and napkins and stuff, we have all biodegradable materials. We're looking at like using more renewable energy sources as well, and just sort of looking at the big picture of like, okay, how can we make this sustainable moving forward, and kind of getting to a place where a lot of other venues are kind of trending towards. Like we are also partners with the Intuit Dome, and they, I believe, are going to be like zero emissions. So we are trying to kind of get there at one point. I don't know when it will be. We are an old building, but hopefully that is the goal, to kind of get to that point.
Ismail, do you have any additional? I know the sustainable piece is important. On our last call, that was something that our panelists mentioned as well, that the Kia Forum is implementing. So you guys must be really working hard to be sustainable in this season. So that's amazing. Is there anything else outside of that, Ismail, that you see as a trend that the Kia Forum is adapting to?
So, I mean, that's a great point. I think Amanda had a great point in terms of what she mentioned, because I know even some of the artists that come through are very conscious of that, and they make special requests, which I think it's great. It raises awareness just overall. And I'm kind of a little bit into tech, so I feel like anything immersive, anything on the immersive side, that just amplifies the guest experience is always the goal, especially for artists. I was, hopefully I'm not cutting off. I think I might be, my connection is unstable again. But I was very impressed with like Justin Timberlake. He had like a monolith that kind of was part of the show. It was a giant monolith that was like a screen, but it was see-through as well. And then it just was, it became part of the show, was moving throughout the stage, and then he ended up on top of it. And so I think anything sort of immersive or, that just adds to the experience. I think that's also, um, uh, it's impressive to see the technology to develop.
I agree. Amazing. Thank you so much for both of you guys' input on that question. So we're going to go into Q&A, and we're going to allow a few folks to raise their hand if they want to come on screen and ask you guys a direct question about anything you shared or anything outside of that that's relevant to the topic here. So feel free to raise your hand if you have questions. If not, I can keep going. I have a few more questions that I can definitely ask our panelists. Okay.
I think
We
there were
have
some
a
questions.
couple.
Oh,
Yeah, we have a couple here. So let's hear from you, Kayla. You want to unmute and ask Amanda and Ismail your question?
Yes, hi. Thank you guys for coming out and speaking today. So as someone that puts on many productions within my high school, like especially recording and live sound engineering, I was curious on like how does one sort of transition into more real world outside jobs?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. So I think there's a lot of different paths to get to like kind of real world outside jobs. I think one way is like meeting bands, going to shows and being like, hey, do you need a sound engineer? A lot of bands like at a small like club level, I used to work at the Echo. A lot of bands at that level don't have their own sound engineer, but maybe they're like about to take off or something. If you want to do sound, you should also know how to drive a tour bus or a tour van, because a lot of times front house will also be the driver on a small tour like that. But getting off topic. But anyway, yeah, I'd say going to clubs, like meeting bands, kind of talking with them and just networking in that way. I think also networking with other people in the audio industry, and just kind of seeing like what are they doing? Maybe they need an extra hand on a gig, not being afraid to kind of jump in if like you get an opportunity like that. I'd also say reaching out to rental houses in the area. So like PRG, Rat Sound, there's so many sound companies in LA. And you can a lot of times like they'll take interns or like they need people to like work in the warehouse. And I've had a lot of friends who they've started there, and then because they know how to mix and everything, they'll start on gigs as like an A2. And a lot of times like those rental houses will send people to the Forum, to wherever else, like just a lot of other gigs. You can start out as like an A2, work with the sound companies, put in the sound, and then start building your network that way. Because a lot of times you'll work directly with the tour or the stagehands or whoever. And I think that's a really great way to just get in to working in live sound.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Again, my name is Kayla. Thank you guys for speaking.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks,
No.
Kayla. Let's hear from Zaira. Zaira?
Yeah. Hi guys. Thank you so much for coming here. Really appreciate you. But my question was kind of, I know this is really exciting work and it's something that's very fulfilling, but kind of how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance in this industry? Like what are some things you do or some tips, I guess, you would recommend to us?
Try to address that one. So, um, thank you for the question, first of all, Zaira. So yeah, that's probably the toughest one, at least for me as well. Is just I think sometimes you're so caught up in what you're doing that I think the simple things sometimes help. Just hanging out with friends, family, doing the other things you're passionate about. I think or just your hobbies, and just taking time to also assess like what you're going through in terms of your work life, but also trying to disconnect as well. I think disconnecting is super important. So, whether that's a small little getaway for a couple of hours or a couple of days is super helpful. And so, yeah, just trying to find a way to recharge and re-energize and then just, come back stronger the next day. But yeah, that's probably the toughest one for me at least.
Yeah, it's really hard, unfortunately. Just a lot of times with our hours. But I think, yeah, prioritizing yourself and the things you like you was saying. And then I also think like kind of setting boundaries. Like sometimes if I have a weekend off, I will actually I'll turn off my email notifications so I don't see it, and I'm just gonna look at it on Monday. And sometimes it's hard to have those boundaries. Then you'll get a text of someone being like, "Hey, I sent you an email," and you're like, "Ah, I'm not looking at it right now." And just trying to be a little strong on those boundaries as well of like, hey, I'm not working, like I call somebody else because I'm not at the venue right now. And it's something that you just kind of have to practice sometimes. Sometimes I'm really good with it. Sometimes I just go and get things done when I shouldn't be working. But it's hard because sometimes it's like everything needs to be done right now, unfortunately.
Yes, like right now, immediately. Thank you so much for sharing that, your feedback, guys, on that question. Very important question, to manage your work-life balance. And even though we don't always do that, I encourage you guys to prioritize that. Not only Amanda and Ismael and myself, but all of you guys as you are along your journey in your succession plan. Let's move on to Brittany. Let's hear from you. Let's hear your question, Brittany. Good morning.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm an undergraduate student at the University of Michigan. So I guess my question kind of has two components to it. So I'm studying sociology, which is so random because I know a lot of people in the industry, like they usually get something in management or they do something with music. So I guess the first part of my question was, what do you think about like opportunities to move across departments or like pivot careers in the industry? And also like, how would you recommend to find different resources for people who aren't necessarily based in Los Angeles or California? Because I know when I was looking, like a lot of things were like in California, and I'm like, well, I'm back and forth between Chicago and Michigan, or just like I know there are a lot of like conferences and stuff too, but some of those aren't necessarily, budget friendly for a college student who's just trying to get by. So like, what would you recommend?
I can jump in this one. Brittany, thanks for your question. So I think the sociological aspect of even the music industry is super important. I did get the opportunity to work at a performing arts center, which, some of my favorite programs were community events, including, exposing different communities to the arts, whether it's performance, whether it's dance. And so I think that social aspect is always welcomed. And so I honestly would recommend, like, if that's your perspective, performing arts centers, and they're all over the country. So I would say that's somewhere that sometimes is underserved. But I think it's some of the most critical things, because the way I got into music is when it was one of those field trips where I got to watch a performance, and after that I was just like so into all of that and the art. So I think that would be my thing, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for both for interning at those places, as well as like even part-time jobs, like as Amanda was saying, usher, ticket taker. Sometimes they need PAs, and so I would suggest, or even small venues, as Amanda was saying. But I do think the nonprofit sector of the performing arts is always a good opportunity, at least in my perspective.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brittany, for your question. Are you all good? Did they answer your question? You feel good about
Yeah,
that?
thank you.
Amazing. Raquel, let's hear from you.
Hello, I really wanted to thank the team for giving us your time this morning. You guys have been super insightful. I've been taking a lot of notes, so I'm extremely excited to ask my question regarding. I got a chance to click on the link and find out more about Live Out Loud. I really think it's super dope with this program that you guys have, including the mentorships. Um, my question would be, regarding around, because I'm also a celebrity stylist, but I'm also a creative director. So this is like my second annual fashion show where I'm working with Cross Colors, Angel Brink, Von Dutch, really big staple brands who's made waves in the community and the culture. And so this year, I switched venues. I had it at the Newmart last year, which is one of the biggest fashion hubs in LA to, house a lot of the brands. But we're trying to expand our partnership in collaboration. And when I went to your website, I got a chance to see a little bit more outside of what you guys do. And I love the fact that you guys have the internship, the mentorship, and the workshops. So I was just wondering, how do you guys support and collaborate, or even, mentorship other folks who are in the industry on a collaborative effort?
Yeah, so I can answer that really quickly for you, Raquel. So Live Out Live basically is exactly what you mentioned. It's a platform that provides programming like mentorship, internship, and this type of programming that brings access to young professionals to actual professionals in the industry and bridges that gap. We do that through different programmatic endeavors, including a mentorship program, which we just launched for the summer, where we're connecting young professionals and students with actual professionals who are active in the live music industry. Amanda and it has participated in a lot of our programmatic endeavors in the past, panels and events, and Ismail is also part of our community here to help bridge that gap as well. So we do these different programs, and we share access and opportunity through different pipelines. And I'm happy to offline with you more and do a one-on-one to kind of dive deeper into how we can help support you directly and offer you and extend these programs to you as we continue to build and grow. So definitely tap in with me, and I'll drop you my email address, and you can just shoot me a note, and we can definitely dig more deeper into how I can support you directly.
Absolutely. I would love to share with you. I know it's kind of last minute. We're, in conjunction with BET Weekend, we are doing a BET House of Fashion show. And we're working with Cross Colors, Angel Brinks, Von Dutch. We've got some big highlights, but outside of that, we've got live performances. So, we're going to be doing some of our live performances at Nova 3, which is a venue. But I just love the fact that this was like right on point, especially where I'm at with with being one of the EPs and the creative director. I hold a lot of hats. So I think from this meeting, we even talked about mental health and how to stay, grounded during these events. So I think this was just a real rounded meeting that I needed to hear. So I want to thank you. It was perfect timing.
Right.
I feel more confident in what I'm doing. And, I'm still growing and learning, and just to know that there's other, like-minded individuals who are actually skilled and would love to mentor and support is a blessing. So I really want to thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you offline for sure.
You're welcome. I'm so glad this was timely and that you are encouraged.
Thank
okay,
you.
well, I'll look forward to hearing from you. All right.
Absolutely. Take care.
No problem. Let's hear from you, Luane. It looks like you will be probably the last question before we wrap things up. So let's hear it.
Okay. Hi, I wanted to say thank you guys so much for the session that you guys had today. I really enjoyed it, and I had learned like a lot. I did want to ask in terms of with just navigating like changing fields, because I know like it kind of like with the production of like doing shows and so forth, it kind of encompasses a lot of different like key responsibilities and roles. So I kind of wanted to know like a little bit more about like how do you go about like supporting people who like are like changing like careers, or at least like navigating like a new environment and just like getting comfortable with that.
Yeah, I will say like a lot of people who work in the industry, like not everyone has like worked in it forever. Not everyone has a degree in it. Most people don't actually. Um, but I would say when you're starting out, I do recommend to a lot of people to just like get a lot of different part-time jobs, which I know isn't feasible for everybody. That's something that I did when I was starting out. I had like 4 part-time jobs. 2 of them were about live events and some of them weren't about live events. But that was very helpful in just starting out within my career of just taking on those smaller roles and building my network that way. Because like, yeah, I started like working box office and doing guest services. And I think those roles are really key when you're just starting out and like you don't have a lot of experience in the industry because you can build and like maybe you start off as just like a guest service like rep, and then you might get promoted to like guest services manager and then kind of work your way up into the industry. But I think it's also like just getting into a venue or like volunteer opportunity, like getting into it and talking to people and like just asking them like, oh, like how did you get your start in the industry, and just learning from them, and just asking people like, oh, like what's your story, like I want to hear more about like why are you working here, how did you get this job, and just picking everyone's brain. That's what a lot of what I did when I was starting out, of just asking a ton of questions.
Okay, thank you.
That's great advice. And just remember that skill sets and talents are transferable to wherever you want to go. You collect them and you take them with you, and you contribute to any space that fulfills you and motivates you to be great in. So I'll leave you with that. And before we wrap up, I want to say thank you so much to our panelists. I want to ask if you guys can share any last minute, I guess not tips, because you've shared so many great tips, but maybe where these young professionals or youth can access you or find you on LinkedIn or via email or whatever it is that you guys can extend of yourself for ongoing active conversations in case people want to connect with you after. And then, yeah, if you guys want to do that before we wrap up, that would be great.
So yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity. I think mentorship, it just means a lot to me because again, I don't think I'd be in the position I'm in without my mentors. And yeah, sure. If you guys can find me on LinkedIn under Kia Forum Event Manager. Ismail Tenorio is my name. So yeah, feel welcome to add me to your network. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Great panel as always. But if you want to reach out, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Amanda Verdadero. Just shoot me a message there, and we can connect further. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amanda and Ismail. Really quickly, if you guys enjoyed this session, in order for us to keep doing this type of programming, feel free to fill out our form, letting us know what you enjoyed about it, what you would like to see future panels be about regarding the live music industry. And I just want to thank the Grammy Museum again for their partnership and collaboration on this panel endeavor. Live Out Live, we're just so grateful to have you guys in connection with us and allowing us to do this program together. So thank you, Skylar, for your work. And any last minute things before we wrap up here? Thanks, everyone.
Just thank you all for attending. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your knowledge again. This is amazing. And Candace, it's always a pleasure working with you all. So we look forward to continuing these programs. And yeah, we will be back soon. We'll have some more programs announced soon. So thank you all so much.
All right. See you guys. Have a great day today.